Great. Hello, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. So yeah, I was given the title Reflections on a Buddhist Approach to the Climate and Ecological Crisis. And I like the word approach. I'm going to focus on that, like what is the Buddhist approach? And the first thought that I had was a quote from Sangharakshita, where he said that our project as Buddhists is to turn planet Earth into a pure land. And a pure land is a world where the Dharma is influencing everything. And Sangharakshita thought this would probably take about 250,000 years. So that's our project as Buddhists. If we've got a project that is going to take 250,000 years, we need to approach it with some common sense, and we need to approach it in a way that's sustainable for ourselves. And what that means is that we do it in a way which we are motivated and we're happy. So we need to find a way of engaging with the climate and ecological crisis and any other injustices that we see in a way which is motivating and which we can enjoy. So we need to find ways of living and acting that give us energy and inspiration, ways that feel like an authentic and meaningful part of your life and your practice. So yes, the world needs people who can engage in important issues for the whole of their lives. And that's what I want to talk about. And so the project that we have is to find ways of living that we want to live that have a positive effect. And I'm going to talk about that under 4 headings. And I call these the 4 forms of activism. They're inspired by Joanna Macy. She talked about 3 types of activism. I've expanded and changed it a bit. And I've put them in the chat. I'll put them in the chat again in a few minutes. So the 4 are confront, care, creative, and change of consciousness. So confront means confronting and preventing injustice. It means confronting and preventing harm. Care means easing the suffering of individuals, of communities, of ecosystems. Creative means seeking and living lives that are truly sustainable, positive, and meaningful. And change of consciousness means being an active part of the steady evolution of human consciousness. And I'll put those in the chat again now, if I can find the chat. So I'm going to talk more about each of those 4. And the purpose of this is for us all to find ways of engaging with the world that are authentic and that feel happy and sustainable ways of engaging in life. And these 4, they do overlap. I think probably, well, certainly, hopefully, whatever we do will affect all 4 of these areas: confronting, caring, creative ways of living, and a change of consciousness. So what do I mean by confront? Well, preventing harm, stopping policies, stopping laws and policies and business practices that cause harm. The other side of that, creating policies, business policies, political policies that prevent harm. Yeah, so laws against importing Amazon rainforest logs, for example, or doing that in a sustainable way. Confront can also mean stopping bulldozers. It can also mean standing in front of bulldozers, or standing in front of activities, physically stopping activities that are causing harm, be that to individuals, to communities, or to ecosystems, or to anything else. And including in confront, I would include stopping or challenging racial violence, stopping and challenging microaggressions. This takes a lot of skill. This takes a lot of skill and courage. I think there's a dharmic perspective in this, in confronting. In the last conversation, people were asking about Extinction Rebellion and, you know, what's the ethics of getting in the way of the smooth running of society, or well, it's not smooth running, of the destructive running of society. And I'd say we need to act in ways that in the long run protect and create health and well-being of ourselves, of strangers, of the planet. So I'm talking about the 4 types of activism, and this first one, confront. The last thing I'm going to say on that is, if you want to confront injustice, and I'm talking in your local situation, maybe in your place of work, even in your family, in your Sangha, collaborate with others. That's most important. And it might include joining existing organizations, Extinction Rebellion being one example of that. I'm very keen to encourage people to look at other forms, other organizations other than Extinction Rebellion. But yeah, do not try and stop the destructive elements of our society alone. Do that in collaboration. And for many of us Buddhists who are doing this work, many people who come to the Buddhist Center, they learn to meditate, they want to help improve the world. We need to get advice, and it's better for us to join other organizations of people who've dedicated years and decades of their life to fighting injustice. So yeah, if you want to confront injustice, collaborate and join existing organizations. So confronting, getting in the way of the destructive elements of society is not for everybody. It's not something that I've done a lot of in my life. And it's not the only way of being an activist. It's not the only way of making a difference. The second way that I've got of making a difference is care. And this means alleviating suffering. It means alleviating suffering and giving strength to people. How wonderful would the world be if everybody, every day, did a kindness to somebody else? Personally, I think that every day, pretty much everybody does do a kindness to somebody else. I think that is part of our human nature. It's part of our way of being. But we can always do more. So care, supporting people who are harmed by unjust systems, supporting people who are harmed by climate change, supporting people who are harmed by unfair policies. And this might mean supporting the person in front of you, the people you live with, the people you work with. It might mean supporting people on the other side of the planet that you've never met. So another aspect of this is supporting other change makers, supporting other activists. So people who are highly motivated to help the problems of the world, we tend to very quickly find out that the problems are huge and our actions seem tiny. So it can be easy for us to feel that we can never do enough. And that can very easily lead to burnout. That can very easily lead to not looking after ourselves. So one of our duties is to notice that in ourselves and to notice that in each other. If you have friends who are engaging in activism, get to know them, be close to them, and help them to be sustainable and to live lives that are happy and meaningful and sustainable for the long run. We're in this for 250,000 years. It's a marathon, not 100 meters. So the Dharmic perspective on this, I'm talking about my second type of activism, which is caring for people. The Dharmic perspective is to live from your compassion. Help yourself and help the person in front of you. Be kind to yourself, be kind to the person in front of you. Ultimately, we're helping people to find meaning and agency in their lives. One caution here is be aware, be careful of not buying into colonialist attitudes. It's easy for those of us in affluent societies to think of ourselves as being the saviors of the world. And it's easy for us to find ourselves stumbling into societies that we don't understand with solutions that we want to give them. So be aware of buying into colonialist attitudes. And the thing there is to help people to help themselves. Again, if you want to care for people, especially if you want to support societies that you don't understand, collaborate, join in and support existing organizations that are already doing this work. You do not have to save the world alone. You do not have to remove all the suffering on the planet on your own. There were many people who devoted their lives, their careers to doing this, and we can help them wisely. So my third form of activism, creative. And this is looking at positive alternatives to the ways of life that we live on our planet. We're looking at this ways, sustainable ways of life. Does that quote be the change that you want to see in the world? So looking for and living ways that are sustainable, that are better, that are happier, that are more satisfying than the usual patriarchal, materialist, capitalist ways, which are destructive. So creating can mean creating justice, creating policies and structures that are more inclusive, that are better for individuals, better for the planet. And certainly in our Sanghas, there's work for us to do there in our local spiritual communities. How can we run our spiritual communities, our Buddhist centers, in ways that are more inclusive, that are better spaces for everybody who comes? Again, by definition, we cannot do this work alone. It's a work of collaboration. Thinking about this presentation, I was looking around at a few Buddhist centers. On the Glasgow Buddhist Center website, I came across this quote, and I will read the quote. Through our Buddhist practice, we are dedicated to transforming greed, hatred, and delusion into wisdom and compassion. Starting with our own practice, we work to establish an alternative way of life that is based on stillness, simplicity, and contentment. And we act to alleviate suffering where we can. So we're looking to create safer spaces and braver spaces, spaces where people feel comfortable to share themselves, and where there is bravery to speak difficult things, especially to call out aggressions. So part of this work, creative, I'm defining it as positive alternatives positive, sustainable ways of life, which are happier, healthier, and more satisfying. And for those of us who are on the front lines, for those of us who like standing in front of bulldozers or motorways, those people need safe, comfortable spaces to go home to. They need spiritual communities to return to from the front lines. And it's very important that there are people focusing on creating those healthy communities where people who are doing other work, the work of confronting injustice, can come to and feel supported and safe. So yeah, places like Buddhist centers, retreat centers, communities, ethical workplaces. I'm talking as a member of the order. I believe in our projects of retreat centers and communities and Buddhist centers as being a positive offering to the ecological crisis, positive offering to people who are fighting injustice. But there are many other ways of creating spaces that are creative, that are sustainable, that are happy ways of living, that are not destroying the planet or destroying other societies or individuals. So I'm going through my 4 types of activism. The first one was confronting and preventing injustice, standing in the way of the harm that's being done. The second one is care. So helping people who've been damaged, helping people and communities and even ecosystems that have been harmed. Creative, which is seeking and living lives that are truly sustainable, positive, and meaningful. And the 4th type of activism is change of consciousness. So the activists and Buddhists, I think, will always be in the minority, but the world won't be truly sustainable until the majority of people have changed their consciousness and have got more awareness of injustice, more awareness of problems, more awareness of suffering, and of their complicity in that. And I think in the last 10 years, in the last 5 years, I think we've made huge positive steps towards this. I think one of the things Extinction Rebellion has done is has brought activism to the front page of the newspapers again and again and again. And that has been in some ways very, very positive. And in some ways it's given activism a bad reputation. There's not a simple answer there. I think personally, I think on the whole, it's been very, very positive in many ways, including a changing of the consciousness and a raising of the profile of the need to act. So change of consciousness. All people need to be aware of suffering and injustice and of their complicity in that. But also, all of us need to be aware that there are alternatives. There are alternatives to a patriarchal capitalist world. There are alternatives that are better, that are happier, that are more satisfying, and that are sustainable. Teaching meditation is obviously a route towards changing the consciousness of many people. Being a friend to people, genuinely being a friend, which means listening and understanding, and exemplifying a sustainable, happy life. If you want to exemplify a sustainable and happy life, the first thing you need to do is to find a way of living which is sustainable and happy, in which you feel that you have agency and that you can have an effect. So for any response to suffering to be a dharmic response, it has to be coming from a place of love. sometimes an active, vigorous love. And it also has to be coming from a place of wisdom, understanding the conditioned and empty nature of samsara. So change of consciousness finally means bringing a dharmic perspective to life. We are conditioned beings. All of our thoughts, all of our emotions and our actions arise in dependence upon conditions. All of our societies and our communities, all of our politics and our law arise in dependence upon conditions. Some of these conditions we have some control over. Our own meditation and our inner work is an essential part of that. How we communicate and how we engage with other people is an essential part of that. If we can get our hands on microphones and political platforms, that is also an essential part of that. Bringing a dharmic perspective to the world. So most actions that we do will affect this latter category of change of consciousness, whether we like it or not. So the dharmic perspective, I've said a little bit about the dharmic perspective of change of consciousness, but just to repeat myself, as Buddhists, our project is to create a pure land, to turn planet Earth into a pure land where all beings are safe, and free, and have agency, and have happy lives. So transforming all of our societies into enlightened societies, where cultures can flourish, where human beings can flourish, where wisdom and compassion are informing our actions, informing our communication, informing the media, the policymakers, the factories, the farmers. And yes, I do believe this will take 250,000 years, and I do believe it's possible. So they're my 4 types of activism. And partly I've talked about these because sometimes when we talk about activism, we talk just about confront. We talk just about getting in the way of destruction. And it's very important that we have other ways of feeling that we're being effective that don't involve putting ourselves in danger or putting ourselves in difficult situations. And what I would like you to do now is to sit in silence for, it'll be 3 or 4 minutes, and just reflect on what do you do, what have you done in terms of these 4 forms of activism. And what effects do you think that has had? Confronting and preventing injustice, caring for other people, creative ways of living, and changing consciousness, be that your own, your immediate circle of friends or of all beings. So I'd like you just to reflect in silence on which of those 4 forms of activism most inspires you. Okay, so can I now ask the tech host to put us in groups of 4 people? And just before you do that, so I'd like you to go into groups of 4 people, and hopefully any language groups can stay together. And I would like you to ask each other the question. You'll have 15 minutes, so just 2 or 3 minutes each, and maybe a bit of space for discussion. So make sure nobody dominates and takes too much time. 15 minutes to talk about the world needs people who can sustain their engagement for the whole of their lives. Where would you like to focus your precious energies in the future? And I'll put that in the chat. So welcome back to everyone. You can hear me, I believe. So I would like to hear from everybody, but that's not possible. And there's quite a lot of us. So when you do speak, please do limit yourself to just saying something that's relevant and to the point, so that other people can get a chance to speak. I'd be very interested in if there's any questions from anything I said, or if there's any reflections that any of you had. And another point, don't quote people from your breakout group. Let them speak for themselves. So you can quote what you said in your breakout group, but don't quote other people without asking them first, please. So any thoughts or questions, I'd be very happy to hear.
Please raise your hand in Zoom using the Zoom hand raise, and I'll be able to spotlight you.
Kasharaji, you're muted. Speak.
Thanks, Sarah. Just very, very quickly, I feel, saying I'm a group, I feel like I'm in a very privileged and happy position where I feel I can effectively engage in all 4 of those ways. I've done sitting on pavements. I'm about to go and meet an XR activist immediately after this meeting, who's approached me to talk about regenerative work involving meditation. So, which is one of the Earth Sanga's kind of core visions. So I'm happy that something will come of that.
Yeah.
If you're living a dharmic life, then you're living a creative life. And I think so. I personally feel I'd like to carry on doing all 4 of them. You know, to the extent of my limited capacities. That's all I wanted to say.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I think XR has put a lot of effort into caring for each other as well, caring for its members. Yeah. So, Chrissy, you have put your hand up first.
Thank you. I don't know if I'm going to be articulate saying this, but so I find myself thinking unskillful thoughts in terms of kind of Sangha members who I find there is no action. There is more like sitting on the cushion, and I recognize that I do kind of othering sort of thing, and it's not a good way of thinking about it. But you did mention that doing meditation is one of the ways that the 4th changing conscience would look like. I don't know if you could say a few words around that, taking action and sitting on the cushion and something around that. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a very interesting and very difficult question. I don't think there's an easy answer to it, but I would say that as activists, we have to not expect other people to do what we're doing. We really have to not expect other people to do it, and we have to not feel undermined by when people don't support our chosen ways. I think that's so important. Change of consciousness, I've emphasized quite a lot that if we want to create a world that's sustainable and got a positive future, it has to be happy. We're creatures of pleasure, and we will go towards what feels happy. If activists run around looking miserable and angry, no one's going to want to join them. Yeah. So I think encouraging yourself to meditate and be in positive mental states is very, very important. And engaging with Sangha members who haven't got an obvious, explicit, active practice, engaging them with them positively and letting them see that there are ways that they can be more effective that are joyful and effective is very, very important. But also, you might see someone who's not sitting on roads or not doing something explicit, but you don't know what they're doing in their private life. Yeah, I used to be quite judgmental of people when I worked at a Buddhist center for the first, few months or years, and eventually I realized that everybody who's doing the metta bhavana, it does affect how they live. It really does. I believe that. Yeah, and we don't need everybody to change the world. We just need everybody to make their own lives more sustainable and be a positive influence on a few other people. Who's next? I think Nancy had their hand up first.
Thank you. Yeah, I am motivated to try and create an eco sangha locally, which is a bit of a challenge, given that we barely have a existing regular sangha. And in my own small way, I would like to help Triratna organizations that I'm involved with to be a little more mindful about their ecological footprint. So maybe you could say something about, well, we value international order, and somehow or another, that means a lot of air flights. So I'm struggling with that.
Yeah. That's a big one. I'm not gonna try and justify flying. I do fly. I try to take that seriously. I do carbon offsetting, and I do try to only fly when I think I'm going to have a positive effect, but I certainly don't justify flying, and it's a big conflict for me and for many others. I think there's a lot of useful reflection to do there. But yeah, email me, we can talk about that. Who's next? Shanti Garba.
Thank you. Yeah, so just a reflection on something that was said a few minutes ago about just realizing that I'm kind of, it sounds a bit Christian, but I'm sort of working out my own salvation, as it were. I'm doing what I need to do, engaging in the way that I'm doing, and just allowing other people to work out their own salvation in their own way, so and recognize that, what I need to do isn't necessarily what everybody needs to do. Yeah. Of course, I'd love if other people, if everybody joined the Triratna Earth Sangha, for instance, I'd love that. But it's more like, well, what do I need to do in order to have a meaningful life? And then lead with that and let other people free to find their own path.
Yeah, I think that's very good. And there are better ways of behaving, and we can help educate ourselves and each other. And take responsibility. One of my questions to you when you're in silence was, what effects do your actions have? And I think we need to review our lives regularly. What effect are we having on ourselves, on the people immediately around us, and on the planet? And sometimes to ask ourselves difficult questions and to make difficult choices.
Yeah.
Kavya Mani?
Oh, wait a minute, I'm not quite finished. There was another point, Saruha, which is,
go on, Shanti Garba.
It's the way I understand the whole Joanna Macy, these different aspects of the Great Turning, or how you've kind of represented it, is that we don't necessarily need to change what we're doing. It's more like just being aware that it's part of the picture, that we could engage in all these different ways. And actually these issues that we're facing are sort of incredibly complex and multi-dimensional, you know, particularly social problems, social issues,
Yeah.
global issues,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
that we could respond in any or all of these ways with an awareness of the bigger picture, more like a systemic awareness. That's how I kind of understand it nowadays.
Yeah, very good. Thank you. And aware that other people will respond in different ways that are also valid. Yeah. Go on, Kavyamani. Nice to see you.
Yeah, you too. Thanks, Sarah. I think you probably started answering some of the question I had. I'm quite struck at the moment with the sense, often have a present sense of it's not quite enough. How I contribute meaningfully in the world will never quite touch some of the deep, deep suffering in the world. And the question for me always is, in the face of that, how do we keep giving all that we can and trust that all we're doing is enough in that seeming paradox?
Yeah. Good question. This is the question which made Avalokiteshvara break into 1,000 pieces. I hope it makes you break into 1,000 pieces as well.
It does, daily.
Yeah, no, we can't save the world. We have to accept that we cannot individually save the world. So collaborate. Yeah. Find other people and support other people. And for some people, the best thing you can do is to dedicate your life to making money and giving it to people who are dedicating their lives to activism. For some of us in developed countries, privileged countries, that's the best thing we could do. It's not for me because I'm no good at making money. But yeah, look at what your strengths are, what are your privileges and your skills and your opportunities, and how can you, and your character, you know, if you're terrified of the police, don't sit on the motorway. And what can you most effectively do to improve the world and live a meaningful, happy life yourself? Yeah, I think that's so important. But yeah, thank you. It's a good question. If you go down this path, you will not reap the feeling of success very often, but you might find the feeling of that you've contributed in a way that is authentic and feels to some extent satisfying. Another quote which I really love: it might be that we are the palliative nurses for society. We might be witnessing the end of civilization. Yeah, we might be the midwives of a new society. That might be the effect of our generation. We might be witnessing the end of society. We might be the midwives for a new society. Both of those activities need kind people. Yeah, palliative nurses and midwives both have to be kind. So that's the starting point. Buddha Shreka.
Yeah, thanks, Sarah. Yeah, so I was just looking at the 4 forms of activism, and I was just seeing confront, care, and creative as like the cause, and then the change of consciousness being the effect. I couldn't quite see the change of consciousness as the cause. So I don't know if I'm sort of going down the wrong path.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So one of my theories is that politicians want to be voted in. Yeah. Politicians want to be voted in. There are millions of people who can potentially vote. If everybody on the planet cared about social justice and environmental actions, then politicians would put that at the top of their priority lists. Yeah. If you go into a supermarket, if all customers are opposed to the meat industry and to pesticides, supermarkets will stop selling meat and they will only sell organic produce.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
So I believe that changing consciousness is actually, in the end, the most powerful thing we can do.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. And the other 3, confront, care, and creative, are also very, very important. All 4 of them are very important. I've just said which is most important, but I wouldn't say any of them is most important. All of them are absolutely essential. Absolutely essential, all four of them, in different ways. And it's very essential that whatever one that you're focused on, and I was just telling Upeksha Priya when you're in the breakout groups that for me, it's been trying to create alternative societies that are positive has been the most important for me, and change of consciousness. And I think being part of a worldwide movement that is teaching mindfulness and metta and spiritual friendship is probably the best thing I can do with the years that I have left. I'm open to that being challenged, but I believe that's probably the best thing I can do, given my skills and my interests and what I've done so far in my life. Okay, thank you all. It's just gone 1 o'clock. Thank you for listening and engaging. And my email address is easy to find if you want to ask me any further questions.